And welcome everyone to Beer Guys Radio. Thanks for joining into the stream here. Awesome show this week, Brett. All our shows are awesome, though.
All
right?
of them, every single one of them.
All of them. We've got a very special guest this week. We have Dr. Keith Villa of Ceria Brewing. You probably know his beer, even if you don't know Ceria.
Very likely, yes.
Keith, you invented a kind of a famous beer, correct?
I did back in 1995. Yeah, Belgian style beer. Yeah.
How about that? A little Belgian style, something, the little
something with
Blue
an orange
Moon
slice
or something like that. So,
yeah. It was Blue Moon Brewing Company, Blue Moon Belgian
Very
White,
cool.
back in 1995.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Now with Ceria Brewing, founded Ceria Brewing. So we're going to talk about that. Interesting story with Ceria, Brian. Non-alcoholic beers. They've got some, quote, non-infused beers, but maybe a little THC and CBD happening
That's right.
there. So we're going to learn all about that. And this is a new topic for us. With beer, Keith, we cover most topics in one way or another, but we haven't done this one before. This is some new stuff.
New territory.
Glad to be part of it. You guys are pioneers.
There we go.
Absolutely.
We're going with it. Good
Blazing
deal.
a trail. Blazing. Ooh, what a great word for that. Yeah.
Blazing. That's right. Absolutely. Well, okay. We're going to get to the radio recording here. If you're watching the stream, you have any questions, feel free to post them up, and we will give you answers on the next break. So here we go.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We are broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. This week, we're talking with Ceria Brewing Company. I am Tim Dennis, and with me as always, Brian, that's a tough word.
Always.
My good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. So joining us today, we have Keith Villa, the founder and brewmaster for Ceria Brewing Company. We're going to talk about non-alcoholic beers and brewing with cannabis. Keith, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, you too. Yeah. And actually, I am the co-founder, because if I said that I was a founder, my wife, who's the CEO and co-founder, might be a little bit upset. So,
co-founder. Excuse me. Yes. Our apologies to the CEO and co-founder. Right. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good stuff. Keith, thanks for joining us, man. Interesting topic, as we mentioned before we got on the air here. One that's new to us. We've dabbled in most beer areas over the years, the different variations and that, different adjuncts, but this is a new adjunct for us to talk about here. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
it's fun to be on the cutting edge. I mean, it's
sure.
great to be way out there.
Absolutely. That's I think the term is cross-faded. So maybe one day we'll be able to get alcoholic beers with the THC in there.
CBD.
It's a one-stop shop, Brian.
Is this adjunct considered part of a pastry stout if you were to put it in there? Or
if you put it in there.
Yeah.
So maybe just eat a pastry with your stout.
It's like chocolatey THC. You know what? I guess they do have various strains that have flavors like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah, especially when you get the munchies.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I was curious. Your products, where do you distribute them? Do you do any partnerships like with dispensaries or anything?
Well, with THC, they actually have to be sold in dispensaries. So you can't, you can't just sell them in the open market or on Amazon or anything like that. You've got to sell them in dispensaries, because it's a really regulated market.
Okay. Are you allowed to sell them from your tap room? Are you?
No.
Are you licensed that way?
No sampling of cannabis. No sales outside of licensed dispensaries. And the state has a policing authority called the MED, stands for the Marijuana Enforcement Division. And these folks are really serious when it comes to regulating and policing all of the cannabis laws.
Wow, that's it. Because I know nothing about it. That's the most I know about cannabis is we are friends with some rappers. They're brewers as well. Nappy Roots. They are in the process of opening a brewery here in
Kentucky.
They're fans but beer's always been my poison of choice, man.
Oh, sure.
So
yeah.
I don't know much about it, but they were telling us about the different strains and designer strains, and like Willie Nelson has a line apparently, and
of course,
it's serious business.
You have
out
to
there,
expect
man.
that from him. Yeah, it is. I've never been inside a dispensary. I've always been curious. I've been in some of the little CBD shops around, but I have a feeling like that's completely different. They're a little bit more like medical, right?
They're getting much better like that, with looking like almost like a pharmacy type atmosphere, but open natural lighting and stuff. When they first appeared, at least in Colorado, a lot of them were really dark and kind of dingy places you didn't want to go in.
Right. That's what, anytime you see them on TV, a dispensary like in California, and that looks like just a head shop, just like a hippie hangout. So
that's what I always kind of thought. I'm like, we've got plenty of those places. They just can't sell the same sort of thing. But
I was out for GABF back in 2016. It's been a while since I've been out there, but I saw the dispensaries all have like the red cross sign there, like a medical looking. Is that a requirement?
Well, they have typically a green cross in
green
front.
one.
It's okay.
Green.
There
the red cross would be the red cross where you go when you're sick from consuming too much alcohol.
Yeah,
I was gonna say the green cross is where you go to get sick.
That's right. Then you look for the red when you got to change your colors there.
Yeah,
boy, people with red-green color blindness, they're just there's no telling where they may end up.
I'm either gonna get fixed, or I'm gonna get so high I won't even care about what's wrong with me.
Receptionist at the Red Cross going, I'm telling you again, I do not have any weed.
That's right.
Good stuff. Interesting stuff, Brian.
Indeed.
New topics.
So, Tim, let's get into the beers of the week.
Now it's time for our Beers of the Week. Brought to you by The Nest, craft beer and barbecue in downtown Kennesaw, Georgia. TheNestKennesaw.com.
Brian, I think you know this, but we've got a nice list of beers to get into this week. Once again, we do want to thank The Nest for sponsoring this segment. Barbecue beer in Kennesaw, Georgia. Brian, they've got a burger now.
Oh, yeah.
That's the big news at the Nest is there now is a burger on the menu. Have you had the burger yet?
I haven't. I've only ever had the nachos and the smoked wings.
We'll have to get up there and check it out.
And the gator.
Like a good
smoked
burger.
Gator.
The smoked gator. Absolutely. Well, Brian, on the list today, we are currently sipping from one of our favorite local breweries from Halfway Crooks Beer. We've got Farina, which is a top fermenting lager. Very crushable beer there. Doing a little throwback to last week's show because Alvarado Street was nice enough to hook us up with a good sampler of their beers. Yeah. So we have their How's It Punch, which is a sour ale with passion fruit, orange, and guava. Since we're going to be talking about some non-alcoholic beers today, Keith, we have one from Partake. Have you tried any of their offerings?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
From Partake.
Yeah.
So I haven't had this one that we're going to drink today, the dark, which I am going to assume is stoutish.
Or porterish, perhaps, or brown ale-ish.
But that's on the list. And a little throwback beer from Upland, Champagne Velvet, which has kind of got a cool story. An ancient brand that they revived, and they had to go to court with, I think it's MillerCoors, for the naming rights. And they proved that the word champagne and Champagne Velvet predated the MillerCoors company. And so the Champagne of Beers had to step aside and let them use that name. That? So there we go, Brian. That is what we are going to be drinking today. Why don't you let us know what's happening in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
So according to Brewbound, a White House executive order targets increasing competition in the beer industry. Under the executive order, there of the alcohol industry as a whole, with the goal being to highlight any regulations or practices that hinder competition and protect the vibrancy of beer, wine, and spirits. Specifically targeted are exclusionary, discriminatory, and anti-competitive distribution practices, harmful patterns of consolidation in production and distribution, and unnecessary trade practice regulations that may unnecessarily inhibit competition by increasing costs, making it harder for the little guys to compete. The results of the findings will be sent to the TTB to consider and possibly make some regulations changes. And an apparent example of what they're looking for, and this was mentioned in the White House blog, is a alleged tacit agreement between MillerCoors and AB InBev to increase prices of their beer starting back in 2008, following a merger that created MillerCoors. So theoretically, something happened there, and they're not happy about it, and so they're getting to the bottom of it. Only about 13 years later, Tim.
13 years later. They'll get there eventually.
Yeah. A bit of timely news. Atlanta's Sweetwater Brewing Company is expanding west with a new brewery in Colorado. The new facility will have the works, the production facility, a tap room, a restaurant, all that sort of thing, and a major expansion plan. It's part of a major expansion plan to distribute their beer throughout the West Coast. In addition to the new brewery, they will also be opening a tap room in the Denver International Airport. But what makes this really timely right now is the talk of the 420 lifestyle in the press release. I saw it mentioned at least 3 or 4 times. So not to mention Sweetwater's acquisition last year by Canadian cannabis company Afria. So, they're just going to be hitting the experimenting with cannabis brewing, basically. Yeah.
You can call me Nostradamus here, but when Sweetwater partnered with a cannabis company, I figured they would be headed to Colorado.
Oh, so, sure.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time that and probably Washington, California too.
I see some collaboration opportunities there, Keith.
Sweet.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So should be cool.
So according to Outdoor Life, a rancher in Wyoming survived on beer for 2 days while pinned under his ATV. So the combination of the weight of the ATV, a dislocated shoulder, and broken ribs meant he couldn't get out from underneath the vehicle. And his attempts to get attention using the vehicle's horn didn't work either. So he waited it out, drinking the beer in his cooler and then drinking the water from the melted ice in his cooler. So he was pretty rough shape when they found him, but he's expected to make a full recovery, Tim.
Okay, well, good for him. You got to do what you got to do to survive.
And beer really is, survival gear at this point. We've proven it.
Monks have done it.
That's right.
Others have done it. Had a good time with it. Beer takes care of you. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys radio show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Keith Villa and Ceria Brewing. Is that like a 10-second delayed echo?
I heard a little something, a little whistle.
Do one of your news. Keith, give us just a second here. We're going to do a little troubleshooting. Do a news story again, Brian.
All right, let me do that. According to Outdoor Life, a rancher in Wyoming survived on beer for 2 days. Now I can't do it. While pinned under his ATV. The combination of the weight of the ATV, a dislocated shoulder, and broken ribs meant he couldn't get out from underneath the vehicle. His attempts to get attention with the vehicle's horn didn't work either. So he waited it out.
I don't hear it now.
I don't either.
Something had it there. So can you check our echo cancellation on StreamYard? Let's see where that is. And
I did hear it was a little sharp something or other, wasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cancel that. Keith, could we get you to check echo cancellation? You should see a settings button or like cam and mic, I think, down towards the bottom.
Okay, I just pressed it.
It should be an audio setting.
Audio. Okay, top says mic, default microphone. Speaker says default speaker. Echo cancellation is checked.
Okay, so then that's where we hover over that question mark, Nate. See what that says to us. Okay, don't turn it off. We should still be good. We should be able to turn it off, but there was something feeding back there.
There was a little, yeah.
I know these are down, but mute them as well, please.
That could be it.
Just make sure they're not. If it's not all the way on 0, it may pick up even just a little bit. So, Brian, one more time, do it like a news story intro real quick there, and then we'll.
All right. They're over here. According to Outdoor Life, a rancher in Wyoming survived on beer for 2 days while pinned under his ATV.
No, where there's nothing at all. It's clean as a whistle. So
okay.
All right. Good deal.
That story got a lot of press on.
Stephen Pete, Kettle Rock Brewing. Steven, I got more telecom questions for you. I'll send you an email. I got telecom questions. So I found out interesting thing, Keith. So my day job is in the staffing industry in telecommunications. Mm-hmm. And Stephen Pete, who owns Kettle Rock Brewing, along with 5 or 6 of other Pete's, it's a family affair there. I think much like Ceria, correct?
Yeah, we're a family-owned and run operation.
Yeah, there you go. So I found out Stephen actually is retired from telecom company AT&T. So now I've been bugging him outside of beer for telecom questions. So
Don't ever tell Tim you know anything about telecom. I mean,
I'm on it, man.
He'll never be off your case.
I got it. Well, I do it with beer in the telecom world too.
Okay.
So I just got a network, man. Got to be done.
How's it punch? All right. Pog. I do like me some Pog. You know what this Pog needs? It needs a little THC and CBD.
There you go. And I believe there's strains that may have those complimentary fruity flavors, right?
Yeah, it's all in the terpenes. Yes.
See, there you go. That's something we were just talking about, is the terpene beers had a little flash in the pan popularity, but it doesn't seem that in and of itself, at least not out here, seemed to hold on that much.
Well, it's interesting because the science shows that in the right dosages, they do work. But when you combine them with cannabinoids like THC and CBD, the action is even intensified or amplified. So it works even better.
No kidding. How about
Madness.
that? You know, I actually feel sad about it, even though it was too intensive a beer to really enjoy very often. New Belgium's The Emperor is gone. They don't make it anymore. Yeah, I was sad. I was sad about that. I'm like, that's a fun beer. It's a weird fun beer. You can't escape that's.
Had you tried that one, Emperor?
I did, and when you open it in a bar setting, it was so powerful. Everybody smelled it.
That's it right there. That's what I was going to say.
I love that about it. I mean, I didn't like it, but I also did. I love it.
But when you came to drinking it, it was almost like drinking decaf coffee. When you're in the morning, you got to wake up and you find out somebody made decaf, and you say, "Oh man, there's nothing there."
What? Why would I want to drink this?
That's true. It really didn't deliver nearly as much in terms of flavor, but I kind of enjoyed the fact that it was like a prank beer. You'd open it up and just watch to see who looks around. Is like, who's smoking a joint?
What's the name of that bar over in? Is it Arsenal?
I think it was
Augusta.
Arsenal.
I think it was Augusta.
Artillery or Arsenal? I think it was. I think you're right. I think it was Augusta.
But just like you said, that's where we tried it, and it's a smaller bar. They were maybe twice as big as our studio.
Yeah,
a small space,
tiny,
but
yeah.
They opened it at the bar and brought it to us across the room, and literally everyone in the bar is like, "What in the world?" And they're like, and I heard someone on the other side of the bar say, "Someone got a Emperor," you know. So it's like, "Yep, that's it." You know, the thing that I didn't like about those, some of those tasted good. Like, I'm hearing that again.
Are you hearing it?
Yeah.
Oh, I am. There's a little bit of I don't know what that is.
I don't know where it's coming from there.
I think it probably is a software glitch. It's us. We are feeding back to ourselves. I think
feeding back from somewhere. So
yeah.
Glitch. There's a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
See it, and it's not. I wonder if it's the last time we heard this a little bit in the studio, it didn't make it on the recording. It was not on there.
I figure we'll probably be okay. I noticed it a little bit, but not enough to. Yeah.
And I think the software we use will dump that out a little bit too.
Yeah.
So we'll fix it. Joey have fun in post.
Joey is a wizard. So.
Yeah, the wizard. Cool. Well, let's get rolling. Talk about Ceria Brewing. Keith, ready to jump back in?
I'm absolutely ready. Yes.
Let's do it.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Your revolution is over, Mr. Lebowski. Condolences, the bum's lost.
Now, back to the Beer Guys radio show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand. So if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on all popular and unpopular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to Ceria Brewing Company.
Keith, Ceria Brewing Company, non-alcoholic beers.
Mm-hmm.
Some just non-alcoholic, non-infused.
Correct.
And some infused with good old THC, because you can do that kind of thing in Colorado, right?
Correct. THC and CBD.
Yes. See, not happening here.
No, not at all.
So, Keith, to talk about your background a little bit. So, we'll start off with the big one here. People will know your beer. Even if they don't know that they know your beer, they're going to know your beer. You invented Blue Moon Belgian White.
Yeah.
Which I think, so that was what, 95, did you say?
Correct. 1995. Yes.
Okay, and that is everybody's had a Blue Moon.
Absolutely.
Everybody's had a Blue Moon, and you know something that I commented on recently. We are currently drinking a beer called How's It Punch that's got pomegranate, orange, and I forget what
passion
else.
fruit,
And
orange,
passion
and guava.
fruit,
I believe.
orange and guava. And I've noticed the same guys that have a fit about someone throwing an orange slice on their glass of Blue Moon are the guys that are now standing in line for the smoothie sours there. So, you know, if you
yeah, it's funny because people have their own criticisms every now and then, and but you just roll with the punches because when you make a great beer, whatever it is. In fact, I don't believe in a bad beer. It's just overpriced. But if you make any type of beer, it's if you're proud of it, that's awesome. Just keep believing in it.
Right. And you know, we don't want to make this all about Blue Moon. I probably could just because it's a cool story. But
yes.
Did you expect it to be what it was? Did you know, hey, I've got a winner here?
Not at all, because when I created that back in 1995, it was right when my wife and I had come back from Belgium, where I received my PhD in brewing, where, I'm just one of, I don't know, a handful of people in the world that has a doctorate in brewing from Belgium. And having lived in Belgium for years while I was getting my PhD, I was exposed to the beer culture. This was from 1988 to 1992, and it was really before Belgium was known as this beer paradise. And I was there, my wife was there, and when you have food paired with beers and people drinking all these crazy styles, it just opens your mind, and you say that's got to come to the United States sometime. It's it's like a tidal wave way out on the ocean. It's coming here, and so I said Belgian beers are coming, but when I launched in 1995, a lot of people don't realize that the number one selling microbrewed beer, because they called it microbrewed beer back then.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I remember. I do.
Yeah. And the number one selling, well, I'll give you a guess. What do you think the number one selling microbrewed beer was in 1995 when I launched Blue Moon?
What would
Sierra Nevada, maybe? Or Sam Adams?
Sam, I'm betting the good old Boston Lager.
That was actually number 2. Number 1 was George Killian's Irish Red. That was the number one selling. That was a
microbrew. Okay.
Back then, the rules were. I think it was they really didn't have rules. It was like if it wasn't a standard domestic lager or light lager, it was a specialty beer, and they would group them into different things. And if it was kind of amberish in color, it became a microbrewed beer. And so people back then. Beer consumers, beer drinkers, most of them considered red beers and amber ales, amber lagers as just really good microbrewed beers. And Belgian beers were almost unheard of back then.
Well, that was my phase in the early 90s. I remember when a Heineken or a Killian's Red or a Moosehead that I lived in Little Podunk, Arkansas, and those beers, that was hot stuff, man. People would make fun of me for drinking the fancy beer if I had a 6 of Killian's, I
like it. Moosehead, the fancy
stuff, right? Absolutely. But and I think it was around 95 or 96 was my first introduction to craft, still microbrew at the time. But some associates from the UK introduced me to Sam Adams. They were over here for a meeting because before that, in the little town I was in, it just wasn't a thing. And then after that, I did go through before we had a big selection here in the US, I think a lot of people who took their craft beer journey in that time period, you went through a period where it was all about the Belgian beers.
Oh, absolutely.
Once they came here and you discovered that. So
yeah, because the Belgians offered so much, and I knew that type of beer was coming here to the States, and people were going to start making them. And so I got busy creating a recipe that I really liked that was based loosely on the traditional Belgian wits. I used oats, wheat, barley malt, and spiced it with coriander and orange peel, but I used Valencia orange peel instead of the traditional Curacao orange peel because I wanted a nice, bright, fruity aroma and taste to the beer. And of course, back then, it really was strange. People said, what is this stuff? And it was hard to get people to try it because it was so foreign. And
right, yeah.
And that was
it was hazy.
Oh, unfiltered. Yeah. People would
Yeah.
say, what's wrong with this beer? And so 95 to 97, I remember it was tough. I was trying to do beer dinners when even people didn't do beer dinners back then, but I learned how to do them in Belgium because that's where they pretty much originated, where you paired beer with food, cuisine, really nice dinners with food. But in the States, people thought I was crazy because I would call up a restaurant and I would say, can we plan a beer dinner? And they'd say, no, we do wine dinners. We don't do anything with beer. And I would convince him and I talk to the chef and give them recipes that the Belgians were doing. And of course they would say, okay, we'll try it. And we tried it and it worked incredibly well. And they were so almost flabbergasted that they put it on their menu and they started working with it. And so it turned people 180 degrees from being unbelievers into believers. And then with Blue Moon, I remember once people tasted it, they went from kind of being afraid of it to falling in love with it to recommending it to their friends. And and then I just to help speed it up and everything, I created that orange slice garnish in 1997 because from 95 to 97, I was noticing when I was traveling around, most bartenders would, if they did anything to it, they would garnish it with a slice of lemon. And I said, this is brewed with orange peel, not lemon peel, so it's got to be garnished with orange. And most bars back then did not carry oranges routinely because there was no reason to. They carried lemons, limes, olives, but not oranges. And so I would try to pick out the most popular bar in a city that carried Blue Moon, and I'd just give them oranges like crazy, crates of oranges, bags of oranges, and showed them how to cut the orange and garnish the glass. And it really set up the whole way of serving Blue Moon. And I did that city to city, and the Blue Moon craze started taking off. So by 2001, that's when Blue Moon reached critical mass and just started growing like a rocket ship. It just took off.
That's something.
He noticed that. Yeah.
He mentioned olives, and now I want to try a dirty Blue Moon.
A dirty Blue Moon. Yeah, how about that?
A few olives on a toothpick in there. So
Throw it in there. Yeah, I did read that something about putting an orange slice on the beer actually changed it so it took off. Something about that, and it may be the visual. I don't know what it was. That made a difference, though. That presentation alone really made a difference.
Huge difference. And you're right. It did a couple of things. Number one, for those people that were just into the smell and taste, it highlighted that bright orange aroma, because when you put a slice of fresh orange on there, it really brings it out. But the other thing it did, if you look through it from a marketing science perspective, what you see is that the orange created a personal emotional bond with the brand, because everybody had their own personal ritual with that orange slice. Some would take it off and throw it. Some would squeeze the juice into the beer. Some would just take the fruit off and put it in the beer. Some would eat the fruit.
Eat and drink, right?
But everybody had their own personal ritual, and so it created this emotional bond with the brand, and that's a lot of the reason why it really took off.
You got to admit, for something like that to stick around 25-ish years, because the ads out for Blue Moon now, they still
show it,
really focus on that orange on the glass, and you got to admit it's picturesque.
It is.
It makes you want to, I want to.
The ads recently were like a painting being painted with that.
Very artistic there. So
exactly.
That I appreciate you sharing that story. I didn't know that's kind of how that came up. That's very cool.
It was a fun time, but back then we didn't get much money from the big brewery, and so we had to be creative.
Yeah, do what you can. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Ceria Brewing.
So we ate up the entire first segment.
That's what I said. We did end up getting into.
We weren't trying to make it into a Blue Moon show.
It's the serious show from
here on out. It's going to be serious. But there's a lot. I mean, it is 25 years worth of that beer, being kind of, for a lot of people, their gateway into craft. I mean, that's the first beer they had, and then they expanded off into other areas. So it's it's a significant thing. You know,
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a very.
It bears.
It's an important beer. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're aware that it's an important beer. Sure.
Yeah, from beer history, if you read articles and such, you'll find out that a lot of writers credit Blue Moon with kickstarting the craft beer revolution in the 1990s. It wasn't the first craft beer by any stretch. I mean, Anchor Steam, Sierra Nevada, they were there before, 10 years before Blue Moon. 10 years, about 10, 15 years. And but what Blue Moon did is it kickstarted the revolution because it provided a beer that was easy to drink, as you said earlier, a gateway beer, so that people who were drinking Bud or Miller or Coors, they could easily pick up a Blue Moon and taste it and say, well, I could drink that. Whereas somebody who would pick up a Sierra Nevada that was back then pretty bitter, they would say,
striking,
sharp.
Yeah.
So Blue Moon did become that gateway beer that kickstarted the craft beer revolution. And it's funny, to this day, I still will get emails from fellow craft brewers who said, thank you for creating Blue Moon, because it was my first step into the world of craft beer and it inspired me to become a brewer. So it's really a lot of fun creating something like that.
Yeah.
The beer that launched 1,000 breweries.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
Beeropatra.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a good beer name.
Beeropatra.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get me a little Champagne Velvet here.
Oh, yeah. Let's get that.
Go from there.
Get us another beer going. All right.
Keith, we need to pause for you you need a refill? You good to go?
I've got mine right here. I'm going to
all right.
top it off.
There we go. See, now I'm getting that. I don't know what it is.
I'm noticing it a little bit too.
It's just in and out, but
I think it's a software glitch, and I think it's probably what's being sent back and forth. Honestly,
stinking software,
Yeah.
Stupid internet. Rawr.
Well, one thing I'm noticing on your picture is your picture freezes up every now and then.
It does. Yeah. We get that little spinny wheel for 2-3 seconds or so.
I don't get the spinning wheel. You guys just freeze. The voice comes through fine, but your video image freezes for just a second or a fraction of a second.
And I'm glad the voice is still coming through, because I figured
good.
it was just losing us all together.
We usually, if we look up and see that it's spinning on our side, we'll pause for a second and just continue our talking. And most people don't notice that. Like, why are they stopping talking? They just it picks right up. So
it's usually only a couple seconds, so it's just like it just seems like a long pause. All right, let's get back to it. So, all right, we covered the first 2 bullet points.
Yeah.
So
do we need to get into any more of the bullet points, or we?
No. I mean, we talked about the background in Blue Moon, so we covered that. So
good.
we'll just come in with the launch of Ceria.
Yeah. There we go.
Cool. Sound good, Keith?
Sounds fantastic.
Let's do it.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to our not our newest radio affiliate, but one of our great radio affiliates. I miswrote my stuff. KENN 1390 AM and 92.1 FM in Farmington, New Mexico. Catch Beer Guys Radio on KENN every Saturday at 10 p.m. Now let's get back to Ceria Brewing Company.
So, Keith, we promised that we wouldn't make the first segment all about Blue Moon, and then that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good story, some good beer history there. But now Ceria Brewing, Brian. So you retired from MillerCoors in 2018, correct?
After 32 years,
32 years there. That's pretty awesome. And so what made you decide to retire and start your own brewery? What took you that direction?
Well, a couple things. Number one, I was living out of a suitcase because I was traveling around the world and the United States, launching Blue Moon in new markets around the world, and then doing things like talking to retailers, big retailers and distributors in the United States. But it got to the point where I'd come back from a 2-week trip in Australia launching. I unpack my suitcase and get a call from the folks in Florida saying, "Hey, can you come down and do beer dinners for our Publix people? Because they're really critical, and it's a great chain. These people are great." Or I'd get a call from our Texas folks saying, "Hey, can you please come here and do some things for the HEB chain, or Cincinnati for Kroger?" And so yeah, it really got to be stressful and hectic. And but the other thing is, I actually reached a point where I qualified for early retirement, where I could literally walk out the door with a pension, access to my 401k plan, cash in my stock without penalties. And then I guess the third thing was I appeared as a question on Jeopardy. And they say whenever you've appeared as a question on Jeopardy, you know that you've reached the top and it's time to
That's it, huh?
move on. So yeah.
They're running him ragged, and he's like, "I'm out of here. I'm going to go have some weed and be done with this."
And I've been on Jeopardy. I'm out of here.
That's it. Yeah.
So you decided to start up your own thing. Why, instead of going into, a lot of places people will leave and they'll start up a brewery, you decided to go into something completely different, like not standard alcohol beer, but cannabis related products. What made you decide to go that route?
So a couple of things, couple of reasons. Number one, in the world of brewing, I always try to look 3 to 5 to 10 years into the future, and it's always cloudy and murky like a blue moon. But I get a feel for the trends that are coming way out there, and with Blue Moon, it was ahead of its time, well ahead of its time. And during that time frame, I created all kinds of different crazy beers that there wasn't a name for back then. Wine beer hybrids, extreme beers, chocolate beer, everything in the 90s when those things were unheard of. Peanut butter beer. And so by the time I retired, my wife and I said, you know what? We want to stay in the beer world, but cannabis is legal in Colorado. It's smokable in its most popular form. Let's figure out a way to make it socially acceptable and in a way that people consume it in a more healthy format. And so we said, okay, let's get to work and figure out how to make a cannabis beer. So that's what we did. And it took a while because we had to number one, we figured out right away that if you put cannabis in beer, you cannot make it an alcoholic beer. It's got to be non-alcoholic because the feds prohibit cannabis, anything federally illegal, into alcohol. And the Marijuana Enforcement Division in Colorado that regulates cannabis, they forbid anything with alcohol in a cannabis beverage. So
it's coming at it from two angles there.
Wow.
Yes.
Prohibit that. Okay.
Yeah, so it's got to be non-alcoholic. And so we said, okay, we'll do that. And having studied in Belgium for so long and getting a PhD, they taught us how to make some fantastic non-alcoholic beers. And so I had to reach back into my memory banks and remember all the techniques. And I created recipes that were non-alcoholic, actually 0.0%, because we didn't want to even have a trace of alcohol, because when you have cannabis there, you just don't want to get the feds sniffing around or the med
Don't
people.
give them an excuse, right?
Yeah, I just stay as
They're very
clean.
strict. Yeah.
Yes, so you just want to be as clean as possible. So I created those, and then we had to figure out how do you put cannabis into a liquid format, because if you extract it from the plant, it's oily. The same as hops. You extract the hop oils; they're oily, and if you try to put those in a beer, it'll just float to the top. So you got to figure out how to make it water soluble so it goes in and stays in. So we got that figured out. And then, of course, we had to create a brand because you can't just launch anything. You got to put a brand behind it. So we figured that out. And so those were the three major hurdles. And then we went to market in 2018. And I think the one thing we did that we look back on that was, hopefully in the future it'll be smart, is Ceria is focused 100% on non-alcoholic beers. We do not make an alcoholic beer. The reason for that is because if you look up in Canada, where they legalized cannabis federally, there's a very strict rule up there that says you cannot manufacture anything for the cannabis world in an alcoholic facility. So, and they say you cannot use any names or logos from the alcoholic world in the cannabis world. So that's why you don't see like Budweiser now, Bud with buds,
Right? Bud,
Weedweiser.
yeah, the Bud.
yeah. You don't see that because that's illegal up there. And so from our perspective, we're thinking, if the feds legalize it here in the States, they probably will take a page out of the Canadian playbook and say, oh, hey, by the way, any kind of beverages, beers or anything, you cannot use an alcoholic facility to make this stuff. And you cannot use any alcoholic logos or brand names on this stuff. It's got to be completely separate. So from the start, our company has been set up perfectly for future cannabis. We have no alcohol production for Ceria. We have nothing. So it's all dedicated to non-alcoholic products and cannabis.
And there's so much separation even within the alcohol industry that I can't imagine. You can't distill in your brewery, you can't do wine in your brewery or that. So I can just imagine adding cannabis to that. The regulation that'll be there. I want to jump back a little bit and see if I heard you correct. You said that when you got your PhD, which was in the 90s, that they were brewing non-alcoholic beers in Belgium. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They have a long history of that because when you look at like the wars, ingredients were hard to find or expensive. So the brewers really had to be creative in making their beers during the World War I and World War II. So they learned how to brew with all kinds of things. And at times they couldn't ferment. So they learned how to make nice tasting non-alcoholic products, even when they wanted alcohol, but there was nothing to ferment. So they made beer-like products. And so they have a long history, and in the 90s, that was kind of the heyday of when they were really researching non-alcoholic beers, because that's when they started taking off in Europe. So to this day, if you look at Germany or Spain, you'll see that non-alcoholic beers are a good part of the beer market. 13%, 8% of the beer market versus 0.5% here in the United States.
Right.
So we have a long runway ahead of us if we catch up to the Europeans.
Well, I had seen there'd been chatter from different people saying the NA industry or market in America will never do anything. And I'm just looking at the growth here in the segment over the last year, 2 years. If you go from 0.5% to 1%, that's a big jump.
That's significant.
That's substantial to measure there,
Yes.
And we've seen our guest next week is Athletic Brewing. We've talked to them a couple times over the years, and just the growth they've had in the NA segment, and the people are drinking it. We've turned a lot of people into it that we've gotten grief when we started dabbling in NA beers. Why are the beer guys drinking non-alcoholic beer? And
because it's beer. It just doesn't have alcohol.
And it tastes great. Yeah. But the one thing we have to always watch out for is a lot of craft brewers are getting into it, but they don't have the science. So they're really, figuring out you've got to pasteurize, because if you don't, you're going to have exploding cans and re-fermentation in the can and alcohol, which you don't want.
Yeah. You don't attenuate too good when you've got less than 0.5% there and stuff. Right. And, speaking of that, talk about brewers starting to dabble in it. We even see that with the alcoholic versions with different styles. Like a style catches on up north. We saw with the Northeast IPAs coming into Georgia. The first year or so of that trend, there were some really bad examples of the beer here because they didn't know what they were doing. I don't think they'd even had a Northeast IPA.
Or even worse, the Brute IPAs. When people were trying to do those.
Yeah. Well, we need to take a break. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We will be back soon to talk more with Ceria Brewing. Are we going into 4?
Yep. I think we are.
Okay.
I'm going to ask this here because I don't think we'll get back to it in the regular show. It's like, do you think it's ever likely to change the whole restrictions between alcohol and THC and CBD? Either one? Is there any kind of movement to say, hey, let us do what we want? Because I know at a certain point in time, I don't think you could mix caffeine or coffee with beer for a while, but now you can, I think.
I don't know if that.
You can brew with coffees, but in general, what brewers are doing is using decaffeinated coffee because there's a legal term called de minimis amount of caffeine. You can't add caffeine the way they did back in the 90s, like with Four Loko and such. Yeah, those
like pure caffeine, basically.
Yeah, and with THC and cannabis, I don't think you'll ever see alcoholic beverages with cannabis because in my book you'll read a lot of the reasons, but the main reason, at least to me, is that when you take cannabis, it stimulates it's called the vagus nerve. It's that nerve in the back of your throat that if you stick your finger down your mouth back there, you gag.
Okay.
So that's the vagus nerve. So cannabis, CBD, it stimulates it so you won't gag. And that's handy for people on chemo who have cancer because they have the dry heaves up to, hundreds a day, but they take cannabis and it's like that goes away because of that nerve. So
when
imagine that.
You stimulated it, I thought the other way.
They're just constantly barfing. Blah, blah.
You get drunk and it just
constant.
Yeah. So they, so picture this, young people at a party doing shots of tequila or whiskey, they're doing cheap tequila. They're just doing shot after shot.
Yeah.
Maybe they get up to like 6 or 7 shots and then it hits them. And a lot of them, their body will say, this alcohol level is way too high. And and then it relaxes that nerve and they start throwing up.
Get it out of there, right?
Because so they don't die. Well, if that nerve is stimulated and you don't feel the urge to throw up, you'll say, man, 6 or 7, I'm going to go for 12 or 13, 14 shots. And pretty soon you could be in some serious trouble because the cannabis has relaxed that nerve or stimulated it. And you can just go on and your blood alcohol level will go through the roof. And so you could get
crazy.
People could die. So that's why from a science perspective, you don't want to mix cannabis with alcohol until a lot more research has been done in this regard.
I'm just glad I've never been that foolish to do like a bunch of shots of tequila or anything.
Or anything like
I've always been
Fireball or anything like that.
Yeah. You stay out of this, Brian.
I hadn't thought of that, but it's a safety mechanism. It overrides a safety mechanism. That's why it's dangerous to get crossfaded, Tim.
OSHA would not approve of that.
No.
Be override.
Hold on. What if you're wearing a hazmat suit when you do it? Would you be all right then?
No. You got to lock out, tag out your face.
That's right.
So. All right.
Joking
Keith,
with people.
Going into the last segment here, we definitely want to talk about your book.
Yes, gotta do the book.
Is there anything else you want us to make sure we mention about Ceria that we haven't yet?
I guess that we're expanding across the U.S. We're in 19 states and Puerto Rico. We're experimenting in Europe. But yeah, we're one of the very few NA beverages that is craft, and we're 0.0, so we don't even have a trace of alcohol. Even though our current label says less than 0.5, we're updating those labels so that this fall it'll reflect the fact that it's 0.0, and we're pasteurized, which we're also going to put that on the label because, as I said, a lot of craft NAs that are coming out are non-pasteurized. What they say on their label, it says like keep cold or keep refrigerated. And that's kind of this verbiage they put on there that it says it's not pasteurized. But a lot of these guys don't realize without alcohol, you can get the growth of pathogenic microorganisms in there. Things like E. coli, listeria, botulism, things that can kill people. I mean, these people are setting them up for a lawsuit themselves. They're setting themselves up for a lawsuit because you can imagine if somebody drinks it and gets sick or dies, their lawyer is going to be all over that brewery. And that's why.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's why you got to look, and for us, it's that important that we're going to put pasteurized on our labels starting this fall.
Okay. So what you're saying is I should boil all my non-alcoholic beer before I drink it,
or call the brewery. Call the brewery to make sure it's pasteurized.
Just stick the can in boiling water for a little bit and pull it back out and chill it. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Sous vide it up, Brian.
That's right. Beer sous vide. All right.
How's the partake dark, Brian?
It's
you dipping into it now?
I am, yeah.
Okay. We've tried probably 15-ish or more
Chocolatey.
NA brands.
Yeah.
So, I remember, like you talk about brewing in Belgium back in the 90s. I remember one sold at health food stores called Texas Select. And then I remember O'Doul's and Sharps. And those are really the only ones, that were over here. So I had no idea that there was like a crafty side to it at that time. So, but I've seen, you were talking about the 0.0. I've seen people looking for that they're like, look, I have an extreme sensitivity to alcohol and I don't want to play around with, this less than 0.5%. I want to make sure there's none there. So
you're absolutely right. There are quite a few people, and pregnant women too. There's a lot who love beer, and when they get pregnant, they don't want even a trace of alcohol. So there's people who search for 0.0 beer.
Yeah. In a small amount of toxin, like, it's a very tiny amount of toxin. How about none at all?
Just a little bit.
Just like, how about none at all?
Just a little bit.
It's a delicious, wonderful, and relaxing toxin, but still a toxin, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I know there's ladies that don't mind, and their doctors have told them it's okay to have a beer or a glass of wine or something. And
I think they used to be.
Some don't want it at all.
I think that used to be the whole the idea or the thought behind the pregnancy, like you're not supposed to have more than a drink or something like that. Now it's like none at all. But like back in the day, I think people used to drink and smoke during pregnancy. So explains a lot of the people I know probably right now. But
it's fine. It's fine.
It's only a little bit of coke,
just a little
only a little bit of black tar heroin.
It's
just
NA
a small
coke.
amount. Yeah, no, it's completely NA.
There's no alcohol at all in this cocaine.
Yeah. Thank God for that.
Yes. All right, Keith, shall we get back to it?
Sounds like a plan.
Let's do it.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
What in tarnation?
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag and commercial-free episodes. Now let's get back to Ceria Brewing Company.
Keith, Ceria Brewing, non-alcoholic beers infused with THC and CBD. How many different lines do you have right now with Ceria? How many different beers?
Right now, we just have two. We have an IPA and a Belgian White. The IPA is dry hopped with Amarillo and Cascade, brewed with Citra, Amarillo, and Cascade. And we believe it's a really nice IPA with a lot of drinkability. It's got body, flavor. And then we have a Belgian White. Belgian White was my claim to fame, having created Blue Moon. Yeah. So we had to do a Belgian White, and it's a little bit different than Blue Moon. It's a little more brighter and fruitier because we use blood orange peel for that one. So, so it makes it pop.
You knew we were going to ask that, didn't
like
you?
How
you
similar
knew that
is
question was going to be there. So
is it even fair to compare the
Belgian
two?
White. So
I mean, when you think about it, one's with alcohol, one's without. It seems like it's an unfair comparison.
Yes, but wouldn't it be interesting to try the two? If it was,
for sure.
If it was the same, it would be interesting to try the two side by side to see, the comparisons there.
I agree.
Yeah, be kind of fun. Now, is your market limited with your beers? I know. Are you expanding with just your NA without the infusions, or are you able to take the infusions out there as well?
The infusions are only in Colorado right now. We're just about to launch in California because we're at a co-packer. I've been flying back and forth to do tests and everything. So probably end of this month or early August, we'll launch in the California market with infused. So then we'll be in 2 states. With the non-infused NA, that can go anywhere because there's not even a trace of alcohol. So we're currently in 19 states. We started on the eastern seaboard and we're working our way west. So yes, we're doing that. We're in 19 states and also in Puerto Rico. We're talking to folks in Canada so we can be available up there. We're test marketing in the Benelux countries, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. And we've got interest from people all over the world that want our beers. So we just want to expand nationally with Blue Moon with Ceria.
There you go.
Whoa,
Whoa.
that's not 32 years of experience with that coming through.
I appreciate that. We always need a good sound bite for marketing. So we won't do that to you. We won't do that to you.
So I noticed looking at the two different dosed versions, you've got different levels of THC and CBD in it. And like, how do you arrive at how much you should use of each? And like, should you use both or not? How did you come up with those numbers?
So yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people don't realize how many milligrams they should have, especially people who've never had cannabis before and want to experiment. So what the states have done in the US where it's legal is they've set their own standard serving levels. Most states have 10 milligrams as a standard serving. And there's a few that have 5. Massachusetts, Oregon, a few states that have 5 milligrams. But typically, those are where we started with our beers because we wanted just a standard serving. We didn't want to overdo it and get people stoned. We want people to drink responsibly, just like beer. In the beer world, people can have several beers, and most people are okay. They're not drunk on the floor after a couple of beers. And we want the same effect with the cannabis beer. We want people to drink 1 or 2 and still be responsible. So with our Belgian White, we have 5 milligrams of THC, which gives a buzz similar to about a 5% alcohol beer. In fact, you're not even buzzed really, you're relaxed. Because, if you drink a glass of Blue Moon, you're not drunk or you're not tipsy, you're relaxed. Any 5% beer, although there are some people who are very sensitive and they will get
could be
buzzed.
right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But most people aren't. With our IPA, it has 10 milligrams of THC plus 10 milligrams of CBD. The reason the CBD is there is to minimize the buzz you get from the THC. So it's a more pleasant, mellow buzz. And so you will get buzzed with 10 milligrams. And that is equivalent to drinking probably a pint of an Imperial IPA, where you drink up a pint. I'm not talking about an 8-ounce glass. I'm talking about a full pint of Imperial IPA. That's a good 9%, 10% alcohol. You're going to feel it, and you're going to get a slight buzz, or some people will get a big buzz, but you'll be buzzed. And that's what we wanted to recreate in the beer world, so that when you have our products, you'll have that recreated feeling that you would get if it had alcohol.
So you don't want us loading up the cooler and throwing it on the tube and tubing down the river, crushing your IPA on the weekend, right?
I mean, that sounds like a good time, honestly.
You just float on. You'd be out in the ocean somewhere.
That's right. As long as you didn't run out of the beer, you'd be fine.
You'd be fine, man. You'd be good
You had
to go.
adult supervision.
That's right. Yeah. Now, do you use just like the straight THC and CBD, or are you using terpenes or strains for the different flavors and such?
No, we use just the isolated THC and CBD. We wanted to avoid the smell and the taste of cannabis because that smell, some people refer to it as dank, and there's other descriptors. And that's what I found is that's really polarizing, where there's some people who love it and others who hate it. But most people don't like that smell of cannabis. Some people say it smells like a skunk or a polecat or burning rubber, but most people don't like it. And so we chose to focus on the great taste of craft beer with the effects of cannabis. But we do have terpenes, which naturally come from the ingredients. So in our IPA, the main terpene is myrcene, which comes from the hops. All hops are loaded with myrcene. And so the myrcene combines with THC and CBD to do a couple of things. It'll intensify that high so that you get it, and it just feels a lot better. But with the CBD, it keeps it as a mellow high. So it's a really nice high you get when the terpenes act in. With the Belgian White, there's 2 main terpenes there. Limonene from the orange peel and linalool from the coriander. Those have a strong anti-stress, kind of a anti-anxiety type of effect. And when you combine that with that little bit of THC, you really relax and feel good after a glass of the cannabis Belgian White from Ceria.
Chill out, Brian.
Yeah,
Chill out.
seriously.
You were talking about the different compounds in there. We had Stan Hieronymus on recently, and was that called the Indestructibles? I forget the exact title. The chart that he talked about the different compounds and hops. It's the survivables.
Oh, the survivables. Yeah, that's right.
But he was talking to us about which compounds can survive through the brewing process, so you can choose the hops, to keep those different, compounds in there. So kind of interesting to see these different terpenes.
Every time we talk to him, he says geraniol and linalool at least 5 times.
Yeah.
I just know this. We can't go too much further into the show. We're running out of time. We have to talk about the book that's coming out August 1st, Brewing with Cannabis.
Yep.
So when we're looking forward to it, what are a few big things that we're going to learn from there it is.
There we go.
Yeah,
what are
my book.
The large print edition on the table behind
poster,
you there.
Yeah, poster back there.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna learn from that?
So for both home brewers and professional brewers, and even lay people who aren't really brewers, but maybe they're beer drinkers, everybody can learn something from this book, because I talk about the history of cannabis, but mainly from the point of how it became illegal in the United States. And then I go on to talk about the legalities, things you should watch out for if you want to get into cannabis. And then I talk about how to grow it at home, the biology, and how it's similar to hops, and really a lot of ways that you can grow it at home. And then I talk about how you can harvest the buds at home, and then also how you can activate the cannabinoids, because in the plant you could eat buds all day. You're not going to get high because the THC and CBD exist as an acid. So you have to decarboxylate them. That means you heat them up. When you smoke it, that heat naturally activates the compounds.
Okay.
Similar to beer and hops. Hops are a cousin of cannabis. So with hops, if you taste hops, they're not very bitter. They become bitter when you boil them. You have to heat them, just like cannabis. So you do that. And then in my book, I show how to do that with the cannabis plant. And then I show how to extract those and make them water soluble to put them in any beverage, your morning coffee, your tea, your water, your beer. And then I give recipes, homebrew recipes, and they could be scaled up too for craft brewers on all kinds of different types of beers, from a light lager to some crazy beers like peanut butter porter, even a hard seltzer. So yes, it's kind of a fun beer book. And then I finish up by talking about what the future holds for cannabis.
So are those non-alcoholic recipes in there, or are you letting people get crossfaded?
I talk about how to make the beers non-alcoholic from a professional big brewer standpoint, or even big craft brewer standpoint, and from a home brewer's standpoint. The easiest way for a home brewer to do it is just after it's fermented and aged and everything, you heat it up to 173 degrees and hold it for about 60 minutes, and all the alcohol, the majority of it, boils off. And then you cool it back down, and you've got non-alcoholic home brewed beer.
See, now I want to try doing a homebrew NA.
I seriously actually want to do one of those. Yeah, I'd like to give that a shot.
With that. So, do you grow your own product, Keith?
Is that legal?
So, yes, in Colorado, it's legal to grow 6 plants per person, with a maximum of 12 plants per household, which is more than enough cannabis that you could ever want. But it's the rule there is that it's got to be grown inside. You cannot grow it outdoors, and you have to grow it away from kids. So it's got to be isolated and locked up away from kids. So there's just a lot of these different rules that exist, and I go over those in the book so that you can do it responsibly, because we don't want any of your listeners to get into trouble.
Nope, keep it clean.
Please don't.
Dr. Keith Villa, Ceria Brewing, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people get your book?
So virtually any homebrew store should have it. If not, it's online. Go to Amazon, type in Brewing with Cannabis. The cover will pop up. And again, it's Ceria. I'm from Ceria. Rhymes with area.
There you go.
And this book here is your key to making great products with cannabis, and
awesome.
And staying responsible and out of jail. We don't want any of your listeners listening to your great show from their jail cell.
That's right. But if you're there, listen.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Keith, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Tim and Brian, it's been my pleasure. Thank you too.
Absolutely. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week. Brian, more NA talk 2 weeks in a row.
What?
This week had a little spin. Next week, Athletic Brewing. It's been a few years since we've had them on. We're going to catch up and see how they're doing. For more craft beer info, follow us online. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers. There we go.
I didn't even see. Did we have many comments?
We just had the one comment today.
All right.
Yeah. Keith, thanks again, man. That was a fun chat. That was awesome.
It's funny. We could probably talk for hours about the Blue Moon side, the history, and Ceria, and because there's so much to talk about. It's just, how do you pick out those nuggets that your listeners will really love?
I was going to ask, and I'm going to ask it right now, really quick. Can you take the buds? Can you take marijuana buds and can you boil them like hops? And can you make like a fresh weed IPA or something like that? Is that doable, or does cannabis require higher temperatures beyond boiling or something?
You'll activate it at boiling temperature. The issue is that when you brew, you buy your hops, you boil it, you make a great IPA. You lose about 70% of the hops. It's just a fact. When you're boiling it, a lot of that stuff sticks to the kettle and everything. So your utilization is only about 30%, 31%. So you lose 70%.
Oh, wow.
If you made a 5-gallon batch of cannabis brew, you're going to need about an ounce of buds. An ounce of buds will run you $150 for a cheap plant. Wow. $300 for a high quality buds. So let's say $200. You'll lose 70% of $140 is going to go right down the drain.
Wow.
So that's why
I changed my mind on brewing an NA.
So that's why you brew a regular beer and then de-alcoholize it if you want. And that's what I cover in my book. And then you extract the buds at home with alcohol. First, you heat them up to activate them, make them active, real CBD, real THC. Then you extract them with alcohol, and then you put it in just a few ounces, maybe 10 ounces, 8 ounces of alcohol. So you've got a really concentrated solution. And then you could do the math and say, okay, I had a 21% THC product and now it's in 8 ounces. So now I know how many milligrams of THC is there. In fact, I give a way to make a Excel spreadsheet to do exactly that in the book. And so you do that, you can calculate how many ounces or milliliters of your solution to put in 5 gallons to get as weak or strong a batch as you want.
Sounds like there may be some information in this book that's handy for people that don't necessarily brew beer.
That's right.
Yep.
I kind of want to experiment with the whole, I like the idea of, I think
extraction.
I honestly wanted to make a Sweetwater 420 clone that actually involved like illicit substances in it. Of course, I never got around to it because, well, I just never did. And honestly, I wouldn't know how to even brew it with it because I would have just thrown it in there, brewed, and we would have gotten nothing out of it. We would have blown $150 on nothing.
Yeah,
so,
would have been nothing for nothing there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Keith, thanks again for joining us, man. Great time. We'll the show comes out this Saturday. We'll definitely send a link over. We'd love for you to share it around there. Facebook, YouTube. Ken, thanks for joining us, man. Glad you enjoyed the show. And we're going to log off the stream here right now. So thanks for joining us. Keith, hang around for just a second if you would.
Okay. You bet.
We'll see you next week.